So thank you so much. And tonight, my plan is to share my story with you and then impart some wisdom, hopefully. And I'm actually going to be sharing some of my gifts and talents with you tonight. I have a song that I wrote, and you will be the first audience that has ever heard this song. So it's very special for you. And then I'll be dancing over here where the DJ is. So it's going to be really fun. All right, so I was born in Tacoma, Washington, and when I was born, they didn't do routine ultrasounds, so it was a surprise that I was born with partial limbs. And I was actually not taken home by my birth parents because of addiction and abuse issues in the home. And I say that I have lived my life one miracle after the other, which have gotten me to this day. And the very first miracle that happened in my life was being adopted by my parents. And they not only adopted me, but I have 5 other siblings who were adopted also, and they have special needs too. And then my parents had 2 miracle babies. They started adopting, and then they had children after trying for 10 years. So there's 8 of us, kids, and then my parents. So it's a household of 10 growing up. Never a dull moment, that's for sure. And one of the things that I'm so thankful for is my parents really advocated for all of our success and independence. And so specifically with me, they advocated for my education. And I'm sure that some of you can relate to this, but the public schools didn't want to work with my parents and they didn't want to educate me. They wanted to send me to a separate school. And my parents were not okay with that. They wanted me to get a great education. So they hired a lawyer. And when I went to kindergarten, it was in the early 80s. But the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 gave my parents the right to fight for my education. So they kind of single-handedly started special education in the hometown that I grew up in. And so I'm very thankful that they did that for me. So part of my story is the challenges, though, of navigating public schools. I'm sure that many of you can relate to this in the room. Although it was a huge blessing to be included in the mainstream classrooms, there was a limited lack of education for the teachers to know how to integrate a student with a disability into the classroom. And so I experienced being teased and bullied, especially in middle school and high school. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that. And so it was a time in my life, I came out of my childhood where I was pretty happy and kids thought I was cool because I would get out of my wheelchair and jump rope and play on the swing set. And then middle school started and it was not cool to be in a wheelchair. And so I really struggled with self-esteem issues through my teens, which opened the door to some difficult things in my life. I was anorexic all the way through high school and early college, just trying to make myself what I thought other people wanted me to be. But one thing I can tell you that got me through all of that was my gifts and talents. And something that my parents did very well was recognizing my gifts and talents along with all my other siblings. And they really helped me embellish my gifts and talents. So they noticed that I could sing long before I could talk. I was carrying tunes to nursery rhymes. And so they got me started in voice lessons when I was 6 years old, right before I started kindergarten. I had the same voice teacher all through my childhood until I left for college. Her name was Melody, and that's a perfect name for a voice teacher. And she was an advocate for me. She always had a kind word to say when I was struggling. And so through all of my upbringing, I was performing on stages and sharing my story and singing and performing, and that really boosted my confidence despite some of the challenges that I was going through in my schooling. So I had a dream from early on in my life that I wanted to be a public speaker and a performer. It's always been in me to want to do that. And so I'm so thankful because one of the other big miracles in my life was getting accepted to Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington. And the reason why that is a miracle is because my SAT scores were awful. And I cried when I opened them and thought I would never get accepted to a university. But the university heard my story, and I'm smart, but I'm not a good test taker. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. And they accepted me into their school of music. And so I had the wonderful opportunity of studying vocal performance and psychology at PLU. And when I went into college, I had a completely different experience than I did in public schools. I was suddenly in an environment where I was surrounded with positivity. I was surrounded with support and friendship and unconditional acceptance. And I had never really experienced that before. I came from a war zone school situation to being in a place where I was able to be at peace. And so in those 4 years, this is another miracle in my life. I had the opportunity of rebuilding my life, rebuilding my self-esteem. And it was really rebuilt by the people around me that said, whatever you heard before was not true. You're amazing, and you have a calling on your life, and you're going to change people's lives with your story and with your gifts and talents. And I had, professors and mentors that were investing in my life. And so when I graduated from PLU, I really had a strong sense of where I was going to go in my life. And hope was restored. I remember in high school feeling really hopeless because it just seemed like I was surrounded with negativity. But being able to be in an environment of positivity really unlocked my dreams again. And so I continued to get an education. I got a degree in radio broadcasting, and then I got a master's degree in counseling. And while I was going to school, I was living in I was living in several bachelorette pads. I moved around a lot. I don't know if any of you have ever lived with several other women in your life, but it is chaotic. And there were some very, very good times in that time, and there were some very, very hard times in that time. And something that time did in my life, though, is it made me strong, because I had to learn how to put aside things that were going on that were maybe not as positive as I'd like them to be. And I also had to recognize my own personality deficiencies, which we all have. And so it was a huge time of growth. And in 2009, I graduated with my master's degree in counseling. And quickly after that, started working in education. So for 2 years, I was a career counselor with students with disabilities that were transitioning into independence. And it was so fun. I got to get them connected with internships and job opportunities in the community. And that was really where my advocacy career started. Obviously the vision was there before, but that's when the rubber hit the road and I really started going in that direction in my life. In 2011, I resigned from that job, but it was kind of mutual. And I was in this place where I had a clean slate, and I was also really stressed out because I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. And it was my sister, Rebecca, who is a very wise woman. She's my younger sister, but she's actually thinks she's my older sister. Don't tell her I said that, although I'm recording this. And she's like, why don't you start a motivational speaking business? And I was like, is it time? Am I ready for that? And she's like, yes, go for it. So she helped me build a website. I ordered some business cards from Vistaprint, and I started my motivational speaking business called Shift. And through Shift, I started an anti-bullying campaign called The Power of Words. And as you can see from my story, I understand the power of words. I've been on both sides of words. I know how it feels to be in a negative environment where it's kind of a war zone. And I also know what it feels like to be encouraged and built up and to be in a positive environment. And all of you can agree that being in a positive environment is what we all want, right? Yes. And so what I do is I talk to young people about their words and how their words have power in the world around them. And really my heart is that in sharing my story with these young kids, that they would have a better experience in school than I did. That they would have the opportunity to flourish and be in a positive environment. And that's what I want to impart to you tonight too, that your words have power. That you have power to speak to yourself, words that are loving and that build yourself up. The words that you think about yourself in your head without even saying anything out loud, those words are powerful too. And then the people that you surround yourself with, the words that are being spoken to you have power. And so my goal in life, and I hope yours is to absorb as much positivity as possible, because that's how we thrive. So after I started my speaking business, I started really learning about how to build a business. And I wanted to share this with you because all of you in this room have gifts and talents too. And the way that I've been successful in running my speaking business and being self-employed is by connecting with my gifts and talents. So really quick, what I want you to do, I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I want you to turn to your neighbor and tell them one thing that you are really, really good at. Ready, go.
Like that high?
If you want to stand,
Yeah, but I want the people behind me won't be able to see.
can you kind of go around the room a little just to capture the top?
Sure.
Okay, 10 seconds are up. I hope you shared with your neighbor, that you connected with something about you that you are really good at. Because that thing that you just told your neighbor is something that will carry you into success in your life. And so I'm an artist also, and one thing that I did is I started making prints of my art and selling them at my speaking engagements. And as you've all probably seen at my table, I have my art with me, and I have a book that I wrote called Dreams Come True, which if you haven't purchased and you want to, I'm still going to have available after we're done tonight out in the foyer. And so really just taking your gifts and talents and turning them into a practical way to earn a living is a really amazing way to be successful in your life. And so one other thing I really want to encourage you in is that I'm sure that many of you are receiving assistance through vocational rehabilitation. I'm not sure what you call it here in Florida. Is that right? Vocational rehabilitation? Okay. So my wisdom for you on that too, and something that I really tried to do, was to make sure that they are also connecting with your gifts and talents with you. Because if you don't tell them something that you're good at, you could end up shredding paper for 5 years. That's right, right? Yeah, I've seen a lot of heads nodding around the room. And so as you're gaining support in your communities, share your gifts and talents just like you did now. Because that vocational rehabilitation counselor can help you take those gifts and talents and turn them into a job. But they can't do that unless you tell them. So I have a little demonstration I'm going to do up here. And I have my lovely assistant Amy here with me. Please give her a round of applause. Okay, so these boxes represent an obstacle that you can face in your life when you have a disability. The first obstacle can be a barrier of accessibility. Now, I use a wheelchair, so that could mean that a workplace or a public place is not accessible to a wheelchair. But barriers of accessibility can also be be not physical. It could be an attitude or a lack of understanding of what you're able to do. The next barrier, which we will build on top of this one, is discrimination. And I'm sure all of us have faced this in our lives. It's not fun, but it is prevalent. But you know, one thing that I have learned is that the barriers of discrimination come down through positive interaction so much better than you should not discriminate against me because it's wrong. And so that's the way that I've broken the barrier of discrimination, is just by saying, this is who I am, and I want to know who you are. Let's put our heads together and get through this. And that's always been a much more effective way. The last barrier is fear. And this is just a human thing. This doesn't even have to do with disabilities necessarily. But all of us have fears, right? Yeah, something we're scared of. But you know what? Beyond your fear is something amazing. And so, even if you're afraid, if you have a dream, you should go after it. And you should push through fear. Because what's on the other side is really amazing. And so, I'm going to demonstrate what I do to overcome these barriers. So you gotta have gumption, you gotta have tenacity, and a willingness to say, I'm not gonna let my barriers stand in the way. And then they turn into overcoming. That says overcome. You become an overcomer of your fears and your barriers. It turns into confidence in yourself. Because when you push past everything that's standing in the way, you become stronger in who you are. And the last one is faith. Because to break through fears, you have to believe that there is something on the other side of fear that's worth going after. Thank you so much, Amy. Give her a round of applause. And so, breaking through fear is the way that I like to describe it. Have any of you ever seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? Yeah. I love the Indiana Jones movies. But one of my favorite scenes there is where the bad guys are chasing him, and he comes up to a cave, and all that he sees below him is just like a pit. And if he falls into it, he's a goner, right? Right. And he remembers his mentor saying, if you step out, there will be a bridge there, and then you can get across. But he couldn't see the bridge. It was invisible at that time. So he closes his eyes, puts out his leg, and just steps out into what looked like nothing. And suddenly, a bridge came out, and he got to the other side, and the bridge went back down, and the bad guys fell into the pit. And so that's the way I think of stepping out in faith and working through fear, is that you may not see anything on the other side, but once you take that step, when you say, I have this goal, and I want to be whatever it is that you just told your neighbor, I have a talent, and I want to share it with the world. I guarantee you there's going to be barriers, there's going to be fear, you're going to have challenges, it's going to look impossible sometimes. But if you go anyway, go afraid, that bridge will come out. And so another huge part of building your success is also support. Everybody say that out loud. Support. So support is your friends, your family, your community, and the advocates that are all surrounding you right now. And so it's very difficult to overcome our fears if we don't have support. But if you utilize your support and say, hey, this is what I want to do, and you have those positive words that are being spoken into your life, that is how you get to where you want to go. You take support, and you take your own faith and your own goals, and you put it together, and you start moving forward. And that's how you get to where you want to go. And you just keep going, no matter what barriers come up, you just keep going. And then some amazing things start happening that you're just like, whoa. And I say that from my own life. So I guess part of my story that I didn't tell you was I ran for Miss Wheelchair Washington in 2013. and that's a pageant for women who use wheelchairs. I won that title with my anti-bullying campaign, and then I got to compete in Houston, Texas for the national title, and I won the title of Miss Wheelchair America. Thank you. And that was a dream come true, and that was one of those milestones where I was like, is this really real? Like somebody pinched me, you know? And my life has continuously gotten better and better since I have received that title. I got to travel the entire United States. I was in 35 states and 25 cities in 1 year. Yeah, it was crazy. And I got to go surfing in Hawaii. It was really fun. With a group called Access Surf. It's a nonprofit that helps people with disabilities surf. And I also got to go adaptive skiing in South Dakota. And I took a peak called Devil's Peak. It was a peak that no one else, most all the other people wouldn't take. It was terrifying and fun at the same time. And I traveled all over the U.S. I got to see New York. I got to see museums, history museums all over the U.S. And it was an amazing year. And I got to meet people like you the whole year, advocates and people with disabilities that are out there living their life to the fullest. And so now I'm continuing to build my motivational speaking business. I'm now the former Miss Wheelchair America, and I'm continuing to travel and share my story. I see you have a question.
Yeah, I know it's in Washington. My sister lives there too.
Oh, is there a Miss Wheelchair Florida? There is a Miss Wheelchair Florida.
No, I said that my sister lives there too.
Oh, your sister lives in Washington. Oh, awesome. Oh, Washington, D.C.? Oh, that's a different state. But we have the same name, so I can see. Yeah. What is your question?
I'm something what you said, like believing yourself. I think I was just trying to figure out, I'm trying to find it. I just trying to find it.
I really don't know how I can hear you. Can you shout it out louder? Sorry. Can somebody tell me what you're saying? There we go. Thank you.
Sometimes I write speeches myself, and my mom tells me to be a public speaker, that I will be my future. I believe in myself.
That's wonderful. Everybody give her a round of applause. Thank you. Okay. I think I want to keep it at just one chair, okay? But you know what? I'm going to be at my table afterwards, and I would love to hear your dreams, okay? So everyone that wants to share, please come see me afterwards, all right? So, yes, I am now.